everyone, welcome back. Today I want to check out this interview with Yannick titled The Division 2 Interview. Ubisoft Massive talks about Year 5 support. It goes on to talk about crossplay, Year 5 support obviously, and other things. And yeah, I think it's quite an interesting read, so I'm going to get straight into this one. This is on the website mp1st.com. So it says here, the first question, will we ever see a native PS5, Xbox Series X and S version of The Division 2? Yannick responding, that's unlikely, because if we really want to take full advantage of those, since we only have one version of the game that is available on all platforms, taking full advantage of those would mean that the game would no longer be available on the old generations. We still have a lot of players that play on the old generations, and we're not ready to leave them behind and ask them to upgrade. Right now, we are trying to make sure every time we add something, it still runs smoothly on the old gen as well. And that obviously makes sense. New gen stuff still isn't widely used. Most of the people that I know who play Xbox or play PS4 or PS play PS4, Xbox One. They don't play Series and PS5. So generally speaking, I imagine that the largest population is still on old gen. So moving on, it says, interestingly enough, a lot of people, ourselves included, thought the Division 2 wouldn't be getting any major content drops after the studio planned for Title Update 12 to be the last major update, and then started re-releasing season reruns in 2021. Then the state of the game dev streams ending as well, and to adding how Massive are now doing a Star Wars game. Can you explain what happened and how we're pivoting to a full Year 5 support? Yannick said it's crazy when you think about it. The beauty of it, it's been quite a real roller coaster, because yes, the plan after Update 12 at the end of 2020 was to stop supporting the game, because as the question mentions, we started working on the Star Wars game as well as the Avatar game. Everybody was very busy at Massive, and the idea was that we just need the people on those projects. And might I just add, we had no idea about this. This kind of was sprung on us at the time. And it basically goes on to say that, at the end of the day, it's not that the Division 2 was bad. It was just that they had so much other stuff going on, because Ubisoft had basically said we need to do this and this, that they had to pull the support for the Division 2. It says here, really, everybody wanted to maintain the Division 2 and carry on, but the main challenge was that we needed people. The people that we had on the project had moved over to other projects, and we can't just record them and say, come back to the Division. That was the challenge for us, finding a team, and we did that with Ubisoft Bucharest. It says we learned a lot with Year 4, which was our first real year of content after we started. We resumed production, and I think Year 5 is where you're going to see the real results of, now we have a full team, but is experienced but knows how to build things in Division 2. This is the real full year of content that we're going to be adding to the Division 2. It's really exciting to see where we are today compared to what could have been. Very true. We could not be playing this game, basically, or certainly wouldn't be getting any support. Will we see the state of the game dev stream return as part of Year 5? Yannick, if you know the Division, and I've been part of those streams for a long time, I would love to, but there's a lot of questions with state of the game in terms of how do we keep it relevant on a weekly basis. We struggled with that in the past. Just the shared time it takes to repair, it takes a full team dedicated to make it happen. I would love to, but it's ultimately not my decision. That's going to be dependent on the people that are running community and communication. If they want to do that, and we really see a demand for that, maybe then we should look at it. But so far, it's not planned. The state of the game was great, but I would rather them focus on actually just in making the game as good as it is, the moving resources over to state of the game. Maybe just doing some kind of monthly or update, like a large blog post monthly, maybe might be a good idea. I'm not sure, but yeah, I did love state of the game, but I can see why they wouldn't want to do it at the moment. Moving on, they said, we can't not ask this. Will we ever see crossplay make its way into the Division 2? This is a big question that has been answered before, but seeing as we're getting to Year 5, see what Yannick had to say. That would be very hard. Unfortunately, the truth of it is that it's not the way our online infrastructure was built. It was built before crossplay became a reality in the industry, and allowing it would mean rewriting and redoing everything and retroactively touching players' accounts and how they're connecting to the game. There's a lot of risk and a lot of heavy work there, and it's very unlikely this would ever happen. They've said this before, and it ultimately is because the Division 2 came too soon for crossplay, and it would take a lot of work that Ubisoft and Massive, I assume, are unwilling to put into it to make it happen, when that work could be put to other resources. And I get it. If there is a Division 3, then I would expect there to be crossplay then, but yeah, I don't think it's any real surprise that we're not getting crossplay for the Division 2, and I don't think we'll ever see it for the Division 2. I don't think it's a case of, well, in 5 years we could do it. I don't think it'll ever happen. Moving on, how will Year 5 Division 2 tie into Heartland, or will the two just be separate titles that you don't see players bleeding into each other? Yannick, our ambition is, and that is why we're talking about the Division as a franchise, we want people to play whichever game they want. We want people to find whatever experience they want, and if they want to play several games like Heartland Division 2, that's great. We're going to make sure that they are rewarded for it, and for us, what matters is that regardless of which Division game you play, you are a Division player to us. You are going to be rewarded, and you are going to get incentives to connect into one game or the other. We are very connected to the Heartland team because we know Redstorm, and we've worked together for a very long time. We have a lot of ideas and hopes and things can do together. We'll be working hand in hand for sure. So it's going to be a case of if you play Heartland and you do this, this and that, you'll get rewarded in Division 2 and likewise. And I think Division Resurgence will also probably fall into there as well. Descent is mentioned as a roguelike mode, which is something I don't think we see often for shooters. What was the thought process in offering this for Year 5? What we wanted with Descent was to give another chance for players to experience a power progression fantasy, which is something that for a lot of our players they haven't experienced in a very long time. Because you get that in the Division, that's one of the greatest, fondest memories that a lot of people have played in the Division, is the progression part of level 1 to level 40 and getting the gear and all those things. And that is totally true. That's probably my favourite part of the whole Division experience. But for a lot of our players, that year in the past have been max level and maxed out on gear since then. They haven't experienced that power progression fantasy, so that was the idea of Descent initially, was to put a game mode out there that basically takes away their gear and they're going to have to work towards becoming powerful again within the mode. And he goes on to talk more about the design of it and stuff. You guys already know about Descent, what it is, what's coming, etc. We'll move on to the next question. I don't want this video to be too long. We know it might be a little bit too early to talk about, but can you give us a tease on how the Division 2's endgame will change in Season 4? We are looking at when you play the Division 2 and when you play a lot of very content, heavy life games that are always that moment when you're a player, you start, you learn the game, you learn the tropes, you play the story, and then the end game begins. And that's usually very daunting, and suddenly the whole thing opens and you get lost. The main ambition behind that change, revamp, is to create an end game that is going to be more welcoming to new players, so doing a better job at introducing new mechanics and introducing new modes and experiences. Really trying to give purpose to each one of them, so it's not just I want gear so I can play either Countdown or play main missions, or I can play Manhunt and everything gives the same rewards. You're trying to find ways so that there's a reason why you would play this versus that depending on what you're after. In terms of cadence and how we are connecting all seasons, you can expect a big overhaul of seasons with Season 4 and how seasons are built and how seasons are rewarding players. It's really about the general structure of it. Why do we come back to the game? What do you do when you come back? What kind of rewards are you after? I'm really trying to have something that takes all those pieces and reconnects them in a way that makes a bit more sense compared to what we have now. So my overall opinion on this is obviously we don't know what they're going to do. It's not a bad idea to open up the end game to new players and give new players almost like stepping stones to get to the end game. That kind of makes sense to me. I do hope that they don't just kind of make the end game simple and just not for the hardcore fans, because that wouldn't really be fair on them. It does need to work for everyone basically. Obviously with the raids you've got the what they call it, I can't remember what they call, but the discovery mode with raids where you can go in and discover how to play those raids and those mechanics. It's possible they add kind of discovery to other game modes in the game possibly. I'm not totally sure how they're going to do it, but got no objections to them making it so that new players have an easier time getting into the end game and learning how to do the end game. But I just hope it's not at the expense of the people that already know how to do it and are good at it, basically. Is this the last question? Maybe. Let's see. Why did it take this long to make a proper Splinter Cell crossover with the game aside from Easter eggs? Fans have been asking for it for quite some time, if we're not mistaken. Yannick, I don't know why it took so long, but the opportunity you saw here is that Descent is an NSA space and you're going into NSA Research Center. We started to think about any NSAing immediately, of course. Our thoughts are going to Splinter Cell. That was kind of a fun thing for us to do, to try and hit at it and play with references. That's why you have the colour green and these kinds of things in the Descent. From there we thought, okay, well, a Splinter Cell can also be a fun thing, and we wanted to add a Splinter Cell outfit, which we know a lot of people have been wanting for a long time. That's true. I think a lot of people have wanted that. I don't know why it took so long, but it's more like when we did, it sounded like a great opportunity to bring in some Splinter Cell elements into the Division. yeah, I'm looking forward to the Splinter Cell outfit for sure. And I love the green in Descent. It's like, yeah, it's the best colour for Descent. And then lastly, I think we have here, it says, with Heartland in testing and seemingly set for release soon, does this mean the Division 3 isn't in development, or is Heartland in effect the Division 3? Yannick, Heartland is its own thing and they're working on Heartland. We're working on Division 2 and that's the focus of each of these teams, basically. A no comment. And then lastly, does the dev team have a primer of sorts for those returning to the game after a long break? What about for those entering the franchise for the first time? As I mentioned, we hope a lot of people will come back and a lot of people will start the game, seeing how it's been supported and how ambitious we are with our plans. We want to make sure that players are coming back or experiencing the game for the first time. Experiences are something that is welcoming, where we're really onboarding you to teach you all the right things. We are definitely taking over to heart, and that's one of the main drivers. As I mentioned earlier, that's one of the main drivers behind the endgame change, the endgame restructuring that we're going to be doing in Season 4. So absolutely we are aware of that, and that's going to be one of the real focuses of Season 4. Like I said, no objections to that, because if you are a Destiny player, for example, you'll know that for a new player trying to play Destiny, it's literally horrible. The new player experience in Destiny is horrible. It doesn't tell you what to do. It doesn't give you any reason why you should be doing it. Getting into the end game is really hard. A lot of the modes that are actually some of the best modes have no matchmaking. The lore is impossible to learn a lot of the time. You don't really know what's going on most of the time. It's really horrible. So and that will put a lot of people off. And so that's probably why with the Division 2 they're focusing on that, because they are expecting a lot of new players to be hitting up the Division 2 for Year 5. So it would make sense that they make sure that the new player experience is as good as it can be. They're a business, they want to retain as many players as possible, but also it's good for us. People who already play the game, if we can get more people playing the game, then ultimately the game will get more support, and then eventually we may get a Division 3, which is something I really hope we do get. But that's it, guys. Thanks very much for watching. Until the next one, epic out.